Hey traders, Raghee here, and in this update we're going to talk about how to look at alternatives to the futures as an option. All right, so let's jump into that. So this, what I'm talking about is ETF alternatives to futures, and let's try that again. ETF alternatives to futures, and what I mean by that is, let's say you want to trade the futures contract, but it's either too cost prohibitive, or the options chain for the futures is not that liquid, or even the options cost prohibitive. What is an alternative? So let's talk about this. These are ETF alternatives to futures, but I'll also talk about how we do this in the futures room, and actually also in my sector secrets room. So what do we do? So first of all, some basic ones. I think most of you know that the SPY is the S&P futures, QQQ is your NASDAQ futures, DIA is your Dow futures, IWM is Russell. I think most folks probably know that, right? But then they may not know that when you look at the NASDAQ, that's actually sure a QQQ, but also it's XLK, it's XLC, and XLY. And then even more related, if you go down the line, semiconductors and even cloud computing. All right, so if we take a look at IWM, that's going to be something we look at on the RTY Russell, right? But it's also, I would keep an eye on the KRE, the regional banks. Those are very much a part of the conversation. So RTY takes you to IWM and KRE. All right, so those are some indices. We have some other ones like crude oil, which is the USO. We have also UGA for RBOB gas. We have UNG for natural gas, which is a really important one because natural gas can be very, very volatile. And so a lot of times they'll say, hey, go with options on the very liquid UNG. We have the TLT for the ZB futures. All right. Many of you know we have GLD. This is a very popular one for gold futures. And we have SLV for silver futures. And then some of you might not know that we have corn for corn futures. And there are a few more, but be aware of the volume, because some of these ETF alternatives to the commodity futures are pretty thin. So be aware of the volume and the open interest in the options. So if you're going to go look at the options on some of these ETFs, make sure there's decent volume. Now, I would say for all of these except for the UGA, you will find good options liquidity in the chain when you go look. Everything else except for UGA is very, very liquid. In fact, in some cases, you're going to have a lot more choice on the ETF side. Gold would be a great example. Sure, there's plenty of gold futures options, but the GLD ETF chain is even more. Now, I've got ZB up here, and ZB is going to be a contract that I'm going to look at on Monday for a potential re-entry after the pullback. So you can see here we had our initial breakout through the swing high of the 1, 2, 3, shot up higher. That's another reason gold is up. You knew that from yesterday's free video. And now we're pulling back. We might look for a re-entry, another shot at getting in TLT on Monday. So put that on your radar. Think about these alternatives, and I'll see you next week.
Without simpler trading, I could not have financial independence.
This is one of the best investments I ever made in my life.
It's helping me find consistency.
It's one of the things that won me